Hello, everyone. This is your host, Laurie Hammer, on the Take Back My Brain podcast. Thank you for joining us again. I'm super excited to be concluding this series on gut health. I will, of course, do more videos in the future, but this concludes the series for this month. So thank you for all of you who have been listening. If you haven't been listening, go back and watch the other episodes, listen to the other episodes on either any of these podcast channels or on YouTube. So thank you for watching and listening. One other thing is that we have one more really fun thing for this gut series, and it's a gut masterclass where I'm going to go into things a little bit deeper for you on gut health, and then you get to ask me any question you want. How about that? Sound really exciting? That's available through my Calm Mom community. The link for that will be in the show notes where you can join that, and we will have a masterclass on a different topic every single month, and I will be giving that community special resources, recipes, ideas, special guests, and etc. that you are welcome to join on a monthly basis. So just check out that link below. So as we're concluding today, I want to talk about one of my pet peeves in regards to gut health. Okay. And we're going to talk about stomach acid. Okay. And we're going to talk about how digestion actually works. So I might get a little ranty on this because I feel like this is why our microbiome gets so messed up, is because we forget about the basics of digestion. So let's dive into how do we actually digest, and then we'll talk a little bit more about stomach acid as we go through that. So digestion actually starts when we see food, or we smell food, or we hear food cooking, right? Our mind already starts thinking, that smells good, it's going to taste good. Sometimes our mouth actually starts to water. That's digestive enzymes that are starting to produce in the mouth. It's called salivary amylase that starts working. It's amazing. It's so amazing that when we see food, we smell it, that our body actually starts digesting and preparing our body. So then we start eating the food, okay? But before we do that, we want to make sure that our brain is good. Remember, top down people, we start with the brain, we end with the brain. So even digestion begins in the brain. So we have to make sure we're in a rest and digest mode, that we're not eating on the go. We're not like, oh, I got to hurry up and shove all this food in. It's better to fast than to shove food in and not digest it well, okay? Because you're going to cause more damage in the long run than if you took the time. That's why we pray before we eat. One of the benefits of praying, other than connecting to God, is it allows our body to calm down. And when we're in a rested state, in a calm state, is when we actually digest. So you need to rest and digest, rest and digest. So take a few minutes, say a prayer, take a few deep breaths, and prepare yourself to eat, right? We're so used to just shoving food in that we forget that it's a whole process. It takes a long time to do, okay? So we have to set our body up correctly. That's foundational. Then guess what happens? We produce that salivary amylase in our body, which then triggers stomach juices to start pumping and getting prepared for that to come down the esophagus. But guess what? You chew first. How many of you don't chew enough? Huh? I'm going to guess a lot of you, right? You chew too fast, you swallow it down, or we're just constantly eating smoothies or things that are super easy to like slurp down. We drink our food and we should be chewing our food. It's really important to chew your food because guess what? It stimulates all 12 cranial nerves, which then helps our brain to not degenerate so fast. Okay, so chewing is really important, but make sure you're chewing your food because that prepares and breaks it down. That's our first line of defense. And a lot of times when we have unwanted bacteria or critters or anything in our food that we don't know about, it gets taken care of in the mouth. Boom, right away. So take your time to eat. And then our food goes down our throat. It's called a bolus. Once we've made it all mushy and stuff, it's a bolus. It goes down our throat, our esophagus, and at the bottom of our esophagus is a valve. Okay, it's a valve, and it opens up, lets the food through, and then it's supposed to be bathed in hydrochloric acid, and that hydrochloric acid actually triggers that valve to shut. Okay, when it doesn't shut is when acid comes back in. Okay, so let's stop there for a minute, and I'm going to probably rant a little bit about stomach acid. This is a good thing. So at the end of that valve, it opens. What did I say? It gets bathed in hydrochloric acid, and that triggers the sphincter shut. So What do you think is happening when that sphincter stays open and you get heartburn? It's not being bathed in hydrochloric acid. Okay. Our body is designed, and this is one of the beautiful intricacies. Our body is designed to have enough stomach acid to trigger that shut. Now, some of you are going to say, oh, I've got a valve issue. I've got this issue. Most people, okay, I'm not saying there's not an outlier here and there. Most people have the wrong amount of stomach acid, and it's usually they don't have enough stomach acid, and the pH of that stomach acid is too high to trigger that valve to go shut. And then what are we doing? We're taking Prilosec, we're taking Nexium, we're taking Mylanta, we're taking Tums to squelch that stomach acid that keeps going back up into our esophagus. Okay, what do those medications do? They suppress the acid production in our stomach, and guess what? Excuse me, your heartburn actually goes away. Well, Laurie, why isn't that a good thing? Well, it's good not to have heartburn going back up into your esophagus, because that will damage your esophagus, because our esophagus has a much, what do I want to say? It's not thick. It's not coated with mucus like the lining of our gut is, like the lining of our stomach is. It's made to withstand high acidity amount, okay? But the acidity in our gut is supposed to be 1.0 to 3.0. So like battery acid level, that's what we need in order to break down the proteins that go into our gut. We were designed to break down animal protein. That's one of the reasons why we have the stomach acid level that we do. That's what it's supposed to be at. And guess what? Once it comes down into here, it's bathed in hydrochloric acid. That sphincter goes shut, and then we digest it. And then guess what? As it goes out the stomach, there's another sphincter called your pyloric valve that opens up into your small intestine. When that food has been properly digested, the pH in the stomach is where it's supposed to be. It's going to push that food, that valve is going to open, and then that food is going to go into the small intestine. And guess what? It's going to get bathed in basically sodium bicarbonate. Okay, and then that's going to trigger bile release. So the pancreas and the gallbladder are going to release all the enzymes that need to be released to actually more neutralize that food, because the small intestine doesn't have that gastric lining that the gut has in it. It's not supposed to be that acidic. So that's when other nutrients that don't need the acidic environment, they need a more neutral or more alkaline environment, that's where they're going to get absorbed. Okay, and so it's going to trigger both of those, the pancreas and the gallbladder, to release specific enzymes, bile, cholecystokinin, etc., to break down those nutrients. And then your small intestine pretty much does the rest of the digestion. It's supposed to finish breaking those down, finish digesting, extract all the nutrients that it needs, and it goes through the lining of the small intestine out into the bloodstream, all those nutrients, and then it nourishes the body. And then it goes into the colon. The colon finishes breaking it down. That's where those fibers and everything feed the microbiome. And we know that the microbiome communicates with everything else in our body, etc. And then we pass it out as stool. That is how it's supposed to optimally happen. Let's go back to stomach acid. This is so key that you understand that. Stomach acid, 1.0 to 3.0 roughly is where your stomach acid should be on the pH scale. Neutral is 7. 14 is super alkaline, 0 is super acidic, right? Okay. 7 is neutral. We need super acidic to digest proteins and to break down harder to digest foods, okay? That's going to stop the reflux back up into your esophagus. If you have the proper amount and the proper pH of stomach acid, you will not have reflux unless you're pregnant or you have an injury, those types of things, okay? On average, you should not be having reflux if your stomach acid is optimal. So tell me, how many of you out there have ever had your stomach acid measured? You go to the doctor, they say, oh, you've got reflux, which you do, right? We're going to put you on an acid suppressor. It takes away the reflux, right? That makes you feel better. You don't have the irritated esophagus anymore. You can sleep at night. You don't have the GERD, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Did anybody measure what your stomach acid was? No. Research says over 96-7% of the people don't have enough stomach acid. So it's very rare that you would have an excess amount of stomach acid. Okay. So what's going on? Your body is toxic. Your microbiome is messed up. Okay. That's why you're not producing enough stomach acid. And that's why you have reflux. So what do? We go in there and we put out the inflammation in the stomach itself. I have specific nutrients that I do that. And then we retrain the body to make its own stomach acid. It's amazing because your body knows how to do that. So we retrain that with specific supplementation. And over time, the body will start to produce its own stomach acid. But let's go back to, okay, so you don't have enough acid, you're refluxing, and then all of a sudden you're developing other digestive issues, or you've got some autoimmune conditions, etc. So what happens when that stomach, all the food that's been broken down in the stomach, it's called chyme, is going to go into the small intestine? What happens is, because it's not acidic enough and that valve opens, and it takes a lot longer for that valve to open if your food is not acidic enough, okay, because there's a trigger mechanism there, right? It'll actually sit in your gut and rot. It sits in your stomach and it actually starts to rot. Guess what happens when that valve finally opens? Because how many of you get really uncomfortable after you eat? It's because that valve doesn't open. You feel super full. Well, finally, your body just kind of forces that valve to open. But because the food is not acidic enough, and we're specifically designed, right, to one thing triggers the next, it doesn't get bathed in the gallbladder enzymes, in the pancreatic enzymes. Your bile doesn't get released correctly. So then you end up with a toxic gallbladder because the bile's not getting released, all because you didn't have enough stomach acid. Okay. And so then you have this rotten food going into your small intestine, which is not properly bathed in the correct digestive enzymes. And then it rots further in your gut and it causes inflammation. And then go back to the episode on leaky gut. Then leaky gut develops. And then over long term, we develop food allergies, all because we didn't have enough stomach acid, and all because maybe we weren't resting and digesting. We weren't taking time to actually enjoy our food and chew it. And we had other stressors going on. Do you see where all this is such a cascade? And so we're treating the acid reflux with a medication that's just covering up a symptom, and we never actually get to the root problem. And so if you're not getting to the root problem, you're not digesting your food in the gut, it's going into the small intestine, causing leaky gut. What do we know? We're not absorbing our nutrients. We know that our microbiome is compromised and it slowly dies and becomes imbalanced. And then what do we develop? We develop osteoporosis. We develop MS. We develop anxiety and depression. We develop all these chronic conditions because we never started digesting properly in the first place. This is all cumulative. If this happens one time to you, does that matter? No, not really, because your body can overcome it. But when this is a chronic condition for years and years and years, this is one of the biggest reasons why people are sick. Life and death, I believe, begins at the cell membrane. You've heard me say that before. But really, let's go to the cell membrane of the gut. And why is that disrupted? So if we can fix that, then we can detox. Then we can get to the harder stuff to reach, like the mercury and the lead and all those types of things. But we have to be able to digest in order to have enough nutrition to feed our microbiome, to make the omega vitamins, to make the B vitamins, to communicate all over our body so that we stay healthy. So they have a strong immune system. We have a strong lymph system. Does that make sense? I hate to keep pounding this, but it's so important that you understand that digestion is the key to health. And if we can help your digestive system, then we help your immune system. Then we help your lymph system. And then we help your brain, right? We can start with the brain and fix deficiencies, but we ultimately have to fix the reason why it's not working correctly in the first place. We go to the gut, and then we work back up to the really upstream issue, which is that chronic toxicity. So I hope that makes sense. I know this is short, but I really want you to understand that if you have acid reflux, chances are, especially if you've never been measured, because it just doesn't happen in mainstream media, if your acid has never been measured, chances are you don't make enough acid and your acid is too alkaline. It's probably 4.0, 5.0, 6.0. And you're not digesting your food. Your food is just sitting there and rotting in your gut, which then imbalances your microbiome. Somebody's like, oh, but I have ulcers, so I must have too much acid. What happens? your acid gets disrupted, okay? Don't make enough, pH is too high. What did I say? Your food just sits in your stomach and it rots. What happens when it rots? It produces toxins. Toxins break down the mucus in the intestine and cause inflammation in the lining of your stomach. So toxins break down the mucus that is supposed to be there to protect your gut. All right. And your body won't produce a lot of mucus if the environment isn't correct for that mucus to be produced. Does that make sense? Our stomach was designed to host really acidic foods. It's designed to release that acid to break down our foods. So don't you think that we were created that would trigger more mucus production? But if it's too high and you don't have enough acid, it also isn't triggering the production of that. So then you have this inflammation going on in your stomach lining gets compromised. And then what little acid you do have, so unless it's alkaline or neutral, it's going to create irritation. And that irritation is going to be the ulcer. And then when you open up that pyloric valve going into the small intestine, you're going to get an overgrowth of that H. pylori bacteria, which is known to be a cause of ulcers. So why do you have ulcers? Because your stomach acid is not correct. And you have a bacterial overgrowth that's not supposed to be in the gut lining. We have in the stomach lining, we have specific bacteria in the stomach that can withstand very intense levels of acidity, okay? But pretty soon we get bacteria in there that weren't designed that. We get that overgrowth of that H. pylori bacteria, and that's when we develop ulcers, okay? And then if that's chronic long enough, then we get people who develop stomach cancer, right? Because then you get those enterocytes that are in our immune system that don't regenerate properly. They get really sick, and then that will cause cancer. And it all goes back to not taking care of the root cause issue. You don't just randomly develop stomach cancer. You don't have the proper acid in your stomach to break down your food, and your stomach got sick. And that's when it was the right environment. The soil was bad in the stomach for you to have that particular stomach cancer or esophageal cancer, right? Because when that acid goes up into the esophagus, that's irritating that's breaking down our immune system. Do you see how all this cascades together? Why it's so important. Don't take shortcuts. Your body was designed to do what it was designed to do. If you remove the interference, it will heal itself. But guess what? We're responsible for that. We have to decide what's the interference. We have to not take shortcuts. Some shortcuts are okay. You can buy chopped vegetables, but you can't take a shortcut with your health. You have to make sure that all these foundational systems are in proper working order so that we're not constantly chasing the symptom. GERD, acid reflux, is a symptom of a deeper issue, okay? And sometimes there's been some studies that have gone on that when you take those acid suppressing medications for a period of time, and they're not exactly sure what that period of time is, kind of like an SSRI, they're finding that it may actually shut off our own body's ability to make serotonin. Same thing with those proton pump inhibitors, those acid reflux medications. They're finding that it actually shuts off our body's ability to make our own acid production, and how long that is, they're not really sure. And if they did release all that information, I think there'd be some, lawsuits going on, unfortunately, because how many of you have used an anti-acid medication? Okay. So one of the things we'll talk about in the masterclass is how do we get off those over-the-counter medications, because it's really important that we do. So we have to heal the gut in order to heal any autoimmune condition that you might have, in order to heal anxiety and depression, and maybe any other mental disorder that you might have. So you see how all these things are cumulative? So the gut is very simple and yet very complicated at the same time. So if we start with the basics, make sure that we know how to eat properly. So we know how to chew our food, we know how to rest and digest, and start to slowly to make those changes so that our everyday stress isn't compromising our ability to digest. We're feeding our body the healthy foods that it needs, a wide variety of them. We're taking our probiotics, adding in our fermented foods. Don't forget that fermented cookbook that I just released. adding in those fermented foods, digestive enzymes, working on the hydrochloric acid production in our stomach, and making sure that our bowels are moving properly, right? That's going to be the foundation of our health. And then if you have other things going on, once we've addressed the foundational issues, then we got to go to the more root cause issues. So, but always know that your gut is a root cause of everything else going on in your body. And there may be a reason why there's a toxicity issue in your gut, which we'll also address. But just know we have to, in order to fix the brain, in order to fix our autoimmune conditions, we have to address what's going on with the gut. And then we go deeper after that. So I really hope you've enjoyed this series. I've enjoyed doing this. We'll have many more series to come, but make sure you join my Calm Mom community. Get involved in that masterclass every single month. Get the special resources that I offer and the special guests. And I'm just excited to love on you in that community. So have a beautiful day. I will see you in the next episode. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with everyone that you know. I appreciate all of you. Have a blessed day.